I've been thinking a lot lately about the future, and not in the optimistic sense people usually expect when they hear me talk about Mars or AI or electric cars, but in the heavy way that sits on your chest when you realize the trajectory humanity is on isn't guaranteed to end well. And when I said a global war might be inevitable within the next decade, I wasn't trying to spark panic. I was trying to explain the pattern I keep seeing, the one you can't unsee once you run the numbers and extrapolate the geopolitical vectors and technological acceleration curves. And honestly, the reason it sounds alarming is because it is alarming. And I've spent years watching governments escalate rhetoric, watching cyber capabilities evolve faster than international agreements, watching AI progress push nations into a new kind of arms race that no one is fully admitting exists publicly yet. And that's the terrifying part, because history shows that when great powers drift into competitive postures around energy, technology, and territory simultaneously, the probability distribution starts tilting toward conflict, not away from it. And I keep wanting to believe we can innovate our way out of the danger, the same way we've innovated past other bottlenecks. But every time I see satellite data showing more surveillance systems going up, or hear intelligence analysts describe how autonomous weapons are being prototyped at a pace even insiders can barely track, I feel that cold calculation run through my mind again. The one that says if we don't drastically shift the incentive structure soon, the world will stumble into something catastrophic, almost by inertia. And I guess part of why I'm speaking now is because I've always believed in calling out the elephant in the room, even if it's uncomfortable, even if people accuse me of exaggeration or doomsaying, because I've been in enough situations, from rockets exploding to companies nearly dying, to know that ignoring warning signs never helps. So, when I imagine the world of 2030, I don't see it as a fixed destiny. I see a branching timeline. One path leading to cooperation, sustainable energy, multi-planetary civilization, and peaceful AI alignment, and the other path leading to a globally fractured environment where nations don't talk to each other except through threats, and where a miscalculated drone strike or hacked defense system or contested resource corridor becomes the spark that lights a fuse we can't put out. And it frustrates me because I know we can prevent this. We're not passengers on some doomed train. We still have agency. And if I sound emotional, it's because I've spent decades building things meant to help humanity survive. Rockets to back up consciousness off-world, cars to stabilize the climate, AI systems meant to make sure intelligence itself remains beneficial. And watching the world drift toward conflict feels like watching someone set fire to the safety nets you spent your life building. So, when I warn about a global war within 5 to 10 years, I'm not trying to play prophet. I'm trying to jolt people awake, to make leaders think beyond election cycles, to make citizens realize that peace is not a default state, but a choice that has to be maintained. And yes, I'll keep pushing for open communication between nations, for AI governance frameworks that don't require mutual suspicion, for energy independence that reduces resource conflict pressure, because I still believe humanity is capable of choosing the timeline where we make it through this turbulence and come out smarter, more united, and ready to explore the stars. But that will only happen if we admit the danger in front of us right now. And that's why I said what I said, not to frighten people, but to tell the truth I see from where I'm standing. Because if there's one thing I've learned from rockets, from companies, from life, it's that the future doesn't just happen, we build it, or we let it collapse, and I'm not giving up on building it. And as I kept thinking about it, flying between factories and launch sites and meetings where everyone talks in careful diplomatic language, I realized something else that bothered me more than any projection or risk model, which is that the world has become so distracted, so overwhelmed by noise, that people don't even notice the fault lines widening beneath their feet. And it feels surreal sometimes because I'll be staring at a dashboard of global satellite telemetry showing military buildup in regions nobody's discussing publicly, while the trending topic online is a meme about my haircut. And it hits me how fragile awareness has become. How easy it is for humanity to sleepwalk into disaster simply because the signal gets lost in the chaos. And that's part of why I've been speaking louder, even when I know it'll trigger controversy or get misquoted or turned into headlines designed more for clicks than clarity. Because somewhere in all this confusion, someone has to say the obvious. We're nearing a point of no return unless we take cooperation seriously, unless we stabilize the foundations, unless we treat peace like an engineering problem that requires active maintenance instead of a background assumption. And I keep thinking about the technologies we're creating. Quantum networks, hypersonic systems, next-gen AI models that can design entire strategies faster than humans can read them. And I wonder whether we're mature enough as a species to handle that power without turning it into conflict. And yes, sometimes people laugh when I talk about Mars as a kind of insurance policy, but it's not a joke. It's a recognition that the universe doesn't guarantee survival to species that don't plan for it. And when I look at Earth right now, I see brilliance and creativity and compassion, but I also see escalating misinformation, fragmented alliances, economic imbalances, and a rising desperation that pushes nations into corners they may try to fight their way out of. And that's why my message hasn't changed. If we want to avoid the war path by 2030, we need transparency, we need energy independence, we need open source frameworks that reduce suspicion, we need leaders who think in decades instead of news cycles, and we need people willing to look up from their screens long enough to realize what's at stake, because every year the window narrows, and if we don't make the right choices now, then sometime in the late 2020s or early 2030s, the world could find itself in a crisis triggered not by malice but by accumulated neglect, the kind that builds up quietly until it explodes. And I'm not trying to be dramatic when I say that, I'm trying to be honest. Because optimism without realism is just delusion, and I refuse to let humanity drift into its own extinction simply because nobody wanted to have the uncomfortable conversation. So, if I have to be the one saying it, then fine, I'll keep saying it. Because the alternative is silence. And silence right now is the most dangerous thing we could choose. And the more I speak about this, the more I find myself replaying moments from my own life. The times when everything seemed on the verge of collapse, yet somehow held together because people refused to quit. And I keep thinking that humanity is in a similar moment right now, a kind of collective Falcon 1 Flight 3, where we're standing on the edge of what could be a catastrophic failure or a historic breakthrough, and the deciding factor isn't luck or destiny, but whether we recognize the seriousness of the situation and act accordingly. And when I look around, I see countless individuals, engineers, scientists, diplomats, innovators, who are trying to pull the world in the right direction, but they're outnumbered by the gravitational pull of outdated systems, political inertia, and the tendency of civilizations to underestimate risk until the moment it detonates. And sometimes when I'm sitting in mission control watching a countdown or reviewing AI safety reports with the team, I feel this strange mix of hope and dread. Hope because I know what humanity is capable of building. Dread because I know what humanity is capable of destroying. And I wish more people understood that progress isn't guaranteed, that survival isn't guaranteed, that history doesn't have a rule that says we get to keep advancing forever without paying attention. And that's why I've been urging everyone who will listen to think long term to approach global stability with the same mindset we use when engineering reusable rockets, anticipate failure modes, eliminate single points of failure, build redundancies, test under extreme conditions, and never assume the system will remain stable on its own, because it won't. Not with the technologies we're unleashing, not with the geopolitical fractures deepening each year, not with the economic pressures pushing nations toward zero-sum thinking. And I know some people accuse me of being alarmist or self-interested or dramatic. But honestly, I would love nothing more than to be proven wrong, because all I want is a future where humanity is thriving, building, exploring, expanding its consciousness across planets instead of destroying itself over borders. And I keep imagining that moment in the 2030s when we could look back and say, we chose wisely, we avoided the drift toward conflict. We stabilized the planet, we aligned AI, we made energy abundant. We reached Mars, not as a refuge from Earth, but as a symbol of what cooperation can achieve. And I just want people to realize that future is still possible, but only if we decide right now to steer toward it instead of hoping the ship somehow rights itself, because hope without action is just complacency. And complacency is exactly how civilizations fall. And I'm not willing to watch ours fall without at least trying to wake it up.